Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Global Nonprofits Guide launch event. I'm Özgür Kahale. I'm the Director of Pro Bono for Continental Europe for DLA Piper, based in our Paris office. And I am in charge of our, DLA Piper is a large law firm, and we have a very large pro bono practice, and I'm in charge of our practice in Europe. Pro bono is the free legal advice we give, and we have a section in the pro bono department where we focus on technology and access to justice. And the project we are going to be presenting to you today, talking about the guide, is a project of this line of work. I'm here with our project partners. Obviously, DLA Piper is not the most important partner here. Our ECNL and PILnet, our NGO partners, amazing NGO partners, contributed and did a lot for the guide. And I'd like to present them to you before we start. So ECNL, the European Center for Not-Profit Law, works on empowering civil society through creating enabling legal and policy frameworks. ECNL enable individuals, movements, and organizations to exercise and protect their civic freedoms and put into action transformational ideas that address national and global challenges. For over 10 years, ECNL has been providing support to CSOs working in restrictive environments through legal guides such as the Global Nonprofits Guide. Our third partner is PILnet, which is a global NGO that serves as a global network for public interest law. And with programs throughout the world, PILnet partners with legal professionals and civil society organizations to protect civic space, address global challenges, and work to build just, equitable, and sustainable societies. So I'd like to thank them for being with me today, with us today, and they'll be on the camera soon to talk more about the guide. Before I start, I'll a little bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions at any point, please post them in the Q&A box, and we will address them as we go along. You will also have an opportunity to post your questions at the end, because we've dedicated a slot for questions and comments and remarks at the end. But if you think of anything to say along the way, don't wait for the end. Just put them anytime you want. And you can also write who is joining and from which country and what your position is. That's nice for the other panelists to get to know you better and hopefully make connections and continue the discussion. After this housekeeping, I'll tell you a little bit about the order of the day today. I'll start with the history of the guide, how this came about, and then Ivana from ECNL is going to demo the guide for us and talk about our wonderful tech partner, Chase for Good. Afterwards, we're going to have a small fireside chat with our keynote speakers, Clement Wohl and Waltrud Heller. Clement is the special rapporteur, and Wohl is from FRA. And we are going to be talking about the challenges civil society organizations are facing currently and how the guide, or how this line of work, could help create a conducive legal environment for them. Afterwards, we'll hear from Anastasia from PILnet. She's going to talk about next steps for the guide and how you can get involved, how you can support this project, this initiative. We're gonna finish with testimonials and reflections from Maria Bogoslav and Yuri Shavashu, two users of the guide, two NGO representatives who've used the guide in the past and now, and tell us a little bit about their reflections and what they think was helpful and how we could improve it. We'll end the session with questions and closing remarks. This is just a launch event. We'll definitely want to continue talking with you, hearing from you, and working with you on the guide after the webinar. Thank you again for joining us today. Okay, so let's get going with the history of the guide. I wanted to put this guide in context for you to tell you a little bit about how the idea came to us and how we've executed it. In 2014, ECNL was approached by a group of nonprofits from Eastern Europe. They were facing really harsh restrictions, environments in their home countries, and wanted to explore ways to register somewhere else and operate from a different country because they couldn't exist in their legal environment legally anymore. ECNL prepared a list of questions that needs to be answered, and that to help them analyze this situation. They prepared questions with them. They identified 10 countries in Central and Eastern Europe. They researched the answers to the questions that they identified themselves with the help of other nonprofit partners that were based in those countries, and published a guide. It was a long PDF document with 10 countries, which was heavily used, actually. I remember forwarding it to NGOs. I was getting questions about pro bono work, pro bono questions in this line. I was sending them the document. And moving on to 2018, ECNL was approached by another group of nonprofits from MENA region, who faced this similar issues in their countries, restricted environment, harsh conditions, and they were looking to register elsewhere similarly. And they asked ECNL to expand the scope of the issues that were covered in the original PDF and also add more countries. At that moment, ECNL knew that they needed help. They just couldn't handle it themselves or with NGO partners anymore. They turned to DLA Piper and Dentons. So we were the original, we've originally expanded their 2014 guide with Dentons in 2018. We answered more questions. We covered 17 jurisdictions, added a lot from Western Europe. And then this guide was being heavily used as well in the context of questions about not only NGOs coming from restricted environments, but also, US NGOs wanting to establish in Western Europe. Instead of each time doing the same research again and again, I would just forward the guide to them. And then we thought of expanding the guide even more, but then this PDF, we couldn't continue with PDF documents. It would, reach out to hundreds and hundreds of pages, maybe thousands, if we added, let's say 30, 40 jurisdictions. That was not practical or user-friendly. And at that moment, we had set up our access to justice and technology practice. So I was looking for ways to digitalize this tool. So I brought on board PILnet and, teamed up with ECNL. We started talking to developers from all over the world, tech NGOs, knowledgeable people in information management and digitalization, legal tech. We've considered a lot of options. Some were very expensive, some were very futuristic, but we landed on a tool called Brighter that DLA Piper had acquired a license to use, which is a no-code platform. It's like you could imagine it as Lego bricks, and you can use these bricks to build projects or workflows. So Ivana, Anastasia, Laura, and I from ECNL and PILnet and DLA, we got training on how to use this tool and build the guide using this tool ourselves. So the reason I'm mentioning is, part of it's bragging, but one part of it is to demonstrate that we didn't have to pay a developer or a company to do this for us. We used a tool that was acquired by a law firm and learned how to use it and did it basically. So I wanted to inspire NGOs who are on the call today to think of similar options and develop tech projects with law firms using their pro bono departments and tech departments, and use the technology that the law firms are acquiring to do good, to support people, NGOs access, share information and do more good, increase their impact, basically. That's the message I wanted to convey with this part of the story. Because law firms are investing in tech heavily. Legal tech is a very big market. There are lots of tools out there. All the law firms have access to those. And I would urge NGOs to team up with them and to ask them this question, like, could we use those legal tech tools to do projects together? So we put all this information on Writer. We launched the first version 2 years ago. And in the first there were 28 jurisdictions. And we kept adding more jurisdictions, and in the meantime looked for ways to make the workflows more user-friendly, set up a website. And at that stage, we partnered with Force for Good. Ivana is going to talk about our partnership a little bit later. So that's why we call this 2.0 Global Nonprofits Guide 2.0, because we had an earlier version. On this version, with our Shiny website, we currently have 50 countries in the tool, 21 in the back end, meaning the research has been done. We just need to polish it up and fill in some blanks and load them in the front end, and on 11 ongoing research countries. So when we add them up in due course, we're going to have 83 countries and counting, of course. And that's where we will need your help. And Anastasia is going to talk about that later on. So now, without further ado, we would like to show you the new guide, the 2.0. And that's Ivana is going to do that for us. And afterwards, I will take over from her to talk to Val and Clement about the civic space, human rights defenders. How could the guide help them more? How can we help the civil society grow and operate in a way that is more professional, get the support they need, and be agile, actually, as agile as the companies. When a company wants to move, has to, close in one place for one reason or the other, or wants to expand, they have all the resources they need. They can hire lawyers, do research investigations, and they are very agile. And I envisage a future where this is possible for NGOs as well. I was in a meeting with a very big NGO 3 weeks ago with their general counsel and their director and general counsel, actually. And I asked the director, so what is your growth strategy? And she looked at me and said, well, nobody has ever asked me this question. And I think we should ask those questions to civil society as well. What is your growth strategy? How do you want to improve your impact, amplify your impact? And these are the issues we will tackle with Val and Clement after Ivana. So Ivana, over to you. Show us what we built.
Thank you so much, Özgür. Hello, everyone. My name is Ivana Rosenzweigova, and I'm a senior legal advisor at the European Center for Not-for-Profit Law. We are super excited that so many of you have joined us for the launch of our Global Nonprofits Guide 2.0. Just a few notes before we start the demo. The video that we will show you is quite brief. We just wanted to give you a sample of how the tool looks like so that you know how to work with it and ask us any questions you might have later on during the Q&A or anytime afterwards. When we say nonprofit, we are referring to non-governmental, not-for-profit organizations. I might also use the term civil society organizations. So let's start the video now, please. Before I show you the tool itself, I would like to introduce to you our new website that is hosting the tool. We decided to prepare this website to create a sort of centralized repository of legal resources on registration and operation for nonprofits, as we've seen through our work that such resource is missing. We have several sections I would like to draw your attention to. The first one is Find a Lawyer, where you can look up clearinghouses and other partners providing pro bono legal help to nonprofits. Reports and Guides section, where we gather other resources on topics that are related to the CSO registration and operation, but are not necessarily covered in the guide itself. And finally, the Get Involved section that describes the ways how you can get involved if you're interested to help us grow the guide. And the guide itself. So the guide contains 3 different modules: a review, a compare, and a guide me module. The review and compare modules were already part of the previous guide, so some of you may be familiar with it. They have been updated for this new version of the guide, as I will show you in a little bit. These 2 modules serve those who already know what countries and legal forms they want to review or compare. We decided to develop the new Guide Me module to make better use of our data and allow nonprofits to filter through our database. The module contains 2 guided pathways for setting up or relocating a nonprofit. We will start with a brief introduction of the review and compare modules and dedicate most of the time to the Guide Me module. So let's go to the review module now. Each module starts with a set of instructions where we explain how the module works and what to do to get the most out of it. When talking about the review module specifically, as I said, it's fairly easy and it's dedicated to those who know which country and legal form they want to look up. As a first step, we will ask you to select the country you're interested in. We will select Austria. In case the country you're looking for is not on the list, please let us know by clicking on the button below and selecting the country you're interested in from the list, as we prioritize adding new countries that are searched for the most. Next, you will be asked to select the legal form. So we will select association. Depending on the country, there might be 1 or more legal forms available. We do not always have all legal entities for each country in our database, so if you can find what you're looking for, feel free to reach out to us. And now you will be asked to select the topics that you're interested to review. There is also an option to select all at the bottom of the page. The same topics are shared across the modules, so you will be working with the same topics in the Guide Me and Compare modules. We have 11 topics ranging from general information and registration up to banking, taxation, and closing down. For our purposes, we will select general information. Before you will see the report, we invite you to familiarize yourself with our legal notice. One thing I would like to emphasize is that our guide is provided for informational purposes only and should not be construed as a legal advice. And finally, you can see the report itself. So as you can see, this is a report that shows information on Austria Association. And since we selected general information, we see this portion of the country report. Above, you might have seen 2 options to download the report and work with it offline. One is to download just the section that you selected. So in this case, general information, and the other one to download the full country report. Now we move on to the compare module. This module is dedicated to those who know what countries they are looking for and they just want to compare 2 countries or 2 legal forms within 1 country to see which one fits them better. So we will click on next. You will be first asked to select the country and legal form you're looking for, and then select the country to compare the first one with and the legal form within the second country. So let's say we will select Argentina. And foundation. And for the second country, Brazil and foundation. Then you will be asked to select the topic that you're interested in. Let's select the registration and continue to the next page. Again, as in the review module, please acknowledge that you read the legal notice before you proceed. And here comes the result, where you can see the 2 country reports in a comparative format. So under every question, you will see information for each of the selected countries and legal forms separately. As in the review module, if you want to work with the information offline, you have the same option for downloading it in a PDF format, either just for the selected topics or the full reports for both countries. And finally, the Guide Me module. This module is dedicated to those that are looking for setting up or relocating a nonprofit but are unsure where. In this module, we will be able to filter through our database by answering a string of questions that we call guided pathways. Before we start, I wanted to emphasize that this is a legal database containing information on what the law says. On this website, we are not analyzing whether the laws comply with international standards or whether they are implemented in the way they are written. Please take this into consideration when working with these guided pathways. When selecting a suitable country for setting up or relocating, please look also into other resources, including those monitoring the state of civil society environment. Regarding the instructions for using this module, there are 2 things I would like to draw your attention to. The first one is warnings. Almost every section has warnings that provide you more information about the question and explain to you what data you will eliminate from the results when answering the question. Skip button, that every question has one. When you click on skip button, no filter will be activated for that specific question, and therefore no countries will be eliminated from the results. So if you skipped all questions within a guided pathway, you would see all countries we have in our database for the selected region. We generally recommend using the skip button in case you're unsure about how to answer a question or if the issue is not relevant to you. We have developed 2 guided pathways. First one is a general one on setting up a nonprofit that basically allows you to filter through comparable information that we have in our database and might be useful to consider when selecting a country to set up. This pathway contains 18 questions covering different areas, including registration, work from abroad, taxation, and others. The second one is a guided pathway for nonprofits in need of relocation due to restrictive or unsafe environments in their home country. For this guided pathway, we selected some of the important legal questions from our database that nonprofits should ask themselves when in need of relocation. We selected these questions based on our work experience, as well as the survey results we obtained from CSOs. This guided pathway contains 11 questions. As both pathways work in the same manner, we will demonstrate only one of the pathways to you today, but we invite you to test both. Let's select Start a New Nonprofit and check out this guided pathway. As a first thing, you will be asked to select the region you're interested to set up or relocate to. We currently allow to select only one region, but we are working on adding an option to select all. Let's select Europe and continue. Next, you can see how a sample question looks like. So on top, you can see the topic the question belongs to. So here is registration. And just below the topic, you can see the warning that explains to you, that I explained to you before. It's basically an explanation of the question and gives you an information about how the filter will be applied to our database and how it will eliminate potential results from the final results page. As you can see, the questions have numbers. So when you navigate throughout the guided pathways, you will see where you're at and how many more questions there are to answer. So let's select yes to activate the filter. I can see the video now.
I was just saying, Ivana, that maybe while waiting for the video to come back, I can introduce our next speakers. to make use of the time. What do you think?
Yes, that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, so after the demo, once the video comes back, we will be hearing from Walter Teller, who leads the EU Fundamental Rights Agency's work on civic space and human rights defenders. Her areas of expertise also include society development, network building, communication, and participatory engagement and facilitation. Along with Walter, we will also have Clement Bolu, who is a jurist. He has served as the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the rights to freedom of peaceful assembly and of association since 2018. Prior to this, he was the African Advocacy Director for the International Service for Human Rights. So we will have a fireside chat with them. But I would like to see if, okay, we're back. The demo is back. Over to you, Ivana.
Thank you. I'll wait for the video. So where did we end? We end with the question number 3. Okay, so we selected a yes to activate the filter. For the remainder of the questions, we will select skip, which means, as I already explained, we are not activating filters. You are again asked to acknowledge the disclaimer. And before we show you the options that are matching your criteria, we would like to again emphasize a few things. Namely, that the results are limited to the countries and legal forms that are currently in our database. Also, it is really crucial to consider other aspects such as the state of civil society environment, political, economic, and social situation in the country. For that purpose, we featured examples of additional resources that may help you assess the situation and select the country. We strongly encourage you to read them. You may also consider other important factors when selecting the right country, including stakeholder presence of potential staff and board members, or collaboration opportunities for your nonprofit. And moving on, we will hopefully see the location results in a second. So here we see the options that are matching our criteria. You can see we have 17 options. You can go back and change your answers, which will also change the final results. If you're interested in reviewing the options you're currently seeing, you can select a number of options you want to review on the next page. You have up to 4 options that you can display at the same time in this module. If you want to review these location options later on, you can always save the options on your computer and check them out later in the review or compare modules. Let's review 2 options and select Austria and Belgium as the options to review. And now you're prompted to select topics. So let's select all of them. And now you can see the 2 reports in a comparative format. As I mentioned, you can select up to 4 options to review at the same time. You can work with this module in the same way as review and compare one using download functionalities. We are also working on adding warning sections to the country reports to inform nonprofits about important restrictions to civic space and upcoming legal reforms. So this is our tool. Thank you very much for your attention, and we are again very sorry for a technical issue. Before I hand over to Ozgur, I would like to say a big thank you to the JP Morgan Chase Force for Good pro bono team, who provided us pro bono tech support. It would not be possible to launch this website, this upgraded website, without their tremendous help. So we were not able to do this part without them. They went with us through all our processes and workflows, helped us clean them up and improve them, and they also helped us build a guided pathway. We really appreciate all your time you dedicated to the guide, and we will miss our regular Friday check-in calls. The final thing I wanted to say is that this is a living project. We continuously add new countries and legal forms and look for ways how to improve the look and content of the guide. And we are also looking for ways how to improve how the data is presented and used to make sure that the guide is as useful as possible. If you are missing any information or you have any suggestions, please feel free to reach out to us. I'll be happy to answer any questions during the Q&A session. And thank you. And Özgür, floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ivana. And yes, a big thank you from me to the Chase team as well. And which is a very good example of skills-based volunteering that is done not on the legal area, but in the tech area as well. We are very familiar with legal pro bono, but there are other pro bono providers out there, and which NGOs on this call, I strongly encourage them to go and seek for them and make use of their services. Val and Clement, can I invite you to come to the floor and switch on your cameras, unmute yourselves for our small fireside chat?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Hi.
Good afternoon. Hi, Clement. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, all of you.
So the introduction, sorry,
yeah.
Go ahead, Clement.
No, I was saying who are joining this important initiative, the launch of this important initiative.
Thank you so much. Sorry to cut you. Now the introductions are out of the way. Let's start asking my questions, and I'll go with ladies first, if you don't mind, Clement. Can you tell us a little bit about FRA's work on civic space and human rights defenders? You work on civil society development. How do you define development? What do you mean when you help them develop? And if you can tie this with what challenges you observe for the development of the civil society at the moment, that would be great. Sorry, it's 3 questions in one, but hopefully it's gonna flow.
3 questions in 1 and in 3 minutes, right? It's that will be a challenge. So before I go into your question, I wanted to congratulate all of you on this piece of work. It's important, but it's also a huge work. So really well done. And I think it has probably more uses behind than we see at the first sight. I have a few ideas, and I know we will come to that later, but congratulations. Civic space. There are, so across the world, is not one definition of civic space, but one thing is clear when we talk about civic space, what we mean, the space for organizations to operate. And in the case of the Fundamental Rights Agency, which is an independent EU agency, so a body of the European Union, we work on civic space and we see it as the space that we need for actors to be able to implement human rights in the broad sense. For us, that has several components, and the mandate of the agency is in the EU, but the patterns of civic space really are the same globally. And so there are, for our work, we use a framework that is a bit similar as the UN framework on civic space. So we look at it in 5 pillars. The first is the legal environment. So what are the laws that guide or that support or that hinder the work of civil society? The second one is participation. How can civic actors participate in the decision making and in the policy making? The third is the access to resources, funding, but also resources beyond funding. The fourth is a safe environment or the threats and attacks that civil society experiences. And the fifth is a cross-cutting one through all of that. That's the capacity of civil society to do that work and the resilience of organizations and of activists themselves. So when we look at these patterns, so the agency has looked at civic space inside the European Union for 7 years now. And since 2018, we have published a report, a sort of monitoring report every year. We see a lot of challenges also inside the European Union. As I said, the patterns are the same or similar globally. But of course, if you look at concrete problems, they are different across the world. So we have countries outside the EU, we've had unfortunately a lot more killings or arrests. in the EU, we have different kind of problems, but very often, yeah, of a similar nature, with less killings and less arrests. In a very short nutshell, sorry, I'm oversimplifying. We can go maybe in more detail in the discussions. But what we also see is that it's extremely important to understand that we need a coherence between what we talk about inside the EU and outside the EU. And so your guide is great, because your guide does that. It just looks at countries and we can compare. And I think we would see that there are a number of good practices, of course, outside the EU, and a number of bad practices also inside the EU when it comes to the legal environment. On civil society, sorry, I'm not going into more details now, but maybe just to say that so your guide touches on the legal environment, and that is important because it can even stop organizations to be able to work. And we see that even inside the European Union, quite a number of organizations and activists are relocating to other EU countries. And of course, even when you relocate inside the European Union, it is a different legal basis, it's a different legal system. So the guide can be very helpful. And of course, globally, the guide is helpful as well. On civil society development, I think what we generally understand as civil society development is when we can develop organizations in a good way to do their work. But for me, that's the umbrella or the heading, but there are different things below that. One is, of course, how you strategize, how you do your projects, how professional you are in your communications, in crisis preparedness, etc. But there are other layers as well that I would like to mention. The first is the overall legal environment, the enabling environment. So that will have an impact on the capacity of civil society to develop. But also, civil society needs also to develop internally. So the own organization and the own activists. How can we strengthen the capacity of an organization, the resilience, the sustainability? But also, how can we do that down to the individual level? So developing civil society means developing the people that are working for civil society. The third area is developing civil society as a sector, developing mutual learning, developing peer support, developing cooperation and alliances to push for certain issues or just to learn from each other, and also across borders. And the last point I want to make under civil society development is community engagement. I know that that's not a very traditional way of looking at civil society development, but what we see is that when, as a civil society, you engage with your constituencies, first of all, you will know what really the needs are, but second, when there are civic space pressures, you will have backing from your constituencies. And so sorry for making it so complex, but I think it is that complex, and I think it's often overly simplified. And we see that, for example, in donors. So I've opened 5 areas: the overall environment, the community engagement, the cooperation in the sector, the organizational level, and the individual. And what we see is that when policymakers and donors look at civil society, enabling space, civil society development, they look mostly at the overall enabling environment. So there is some support and understanding and funding for advocacy, watchdog. But for all the other 4 areas, frankly, there is not so much also financial support, especially when we're looking at protection at the individual level, at the organizational level, etc. I think I don't have more time than this now, but I'm very happy to go into more detail in questions in the discussion later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Van. Thanks a lot for your reflections. And yeah, I mean, the 5 criteria was very helpful for me to keep in mind, which might also give us ideas to grow the guide, because as I said in the beginning, it's the way you look at this guide, you could see it as a compilation of laws, but also you could see as a policy and an advocacy tool. And how could we make use of this information to achieve some harmonization goals, growth goals, lobby before the governments to make changes and stuff, but we'll talk about that in a while. So over to you, Clement. So can you share with us, you've been the special rapporteur on the rights to freedom of peaceful assembly and of association since 2018. I'm sure you've gathered a lot of information, experience, and knowledge throughout those years. Can you share with us how has the climate for freedom of association changed over the years during your tenure as the special rapporteur? And what threats and challenges do you observe are there to the civil society at the moment?
Yeah, thank you very much also for the inviting me. Let me first really thank DLA Piper, ECNL, and also PILnet for this important initiative. I think the launch of this guide is I see it as contributing to create this safe and enable environment that we all are fighting to ensure that the right to association, which is protected under the Article 22 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which also reaffirm that everyone have the right to form and to join association, including also creation of the trade union. And also that it is important that that states put all necessary means in place, as the covenant is saying, to enable citizen communities in order to enjoy this right. Enjoying this right means also for the people to have to be able to form an association easily, to be able also to operate, and to be able also to contribute to building a society that is more inclusive and is more peaceful. And this is exactly also what I think my mandate is about, really to look at this obligation of the states and also ensure that states fulfill its obligation at the national level in creating this environment for civil society, for communities to be able to enjoy these rights. And it's important to emphasize also that the right to association is a critical in any democratic society. It's a critical for communities, for marginalized groups, for those who are left behind, to be able to participate in public affairs. Without this fundamental, the guarantee of this fundamental freedom, many people will left behind. Many people will not be able to participate, because we know that is through organization, through forming association, or forming a different type of association that people are able to contribute and to change their own future, depending on challenges that they are facing in their own country. While this, the covenants guarantee these rights, but also in some way allow states, for example, to resort to the certain limitation that are based on the covenant that should be legitimate, necessary, and proportionate. We have seen through years now that states are using some of these limitation that are put there as exception, as a rules. And then I want to explain you that we know that traditionally one of the challenges for people to form an association, even if in our view the covenant is clear that as soon as people come together and want to work together for the interest of their society, they should only declare that to the government, to the authority. But we know that one of the challenges that we have been facing for years is the whole issue of the regime of registrations, the use of legal means to restrict the ability of people to fully enjoy the rights provided by the Article 22 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And one of the things that we receive, because my mandate also includes receiving concern when people are not able to form association, or when they are prevented to form association, or when the legal environment is not allowing them to form, to send me those information. And some of these information concern most of the cases when it comes to the registration of association, the issue of the really burdensome requirement to create an association. In many countries, we say that you navigate through a complex legal environment in order to form association, including what are the board of association, what the association will work on, what are some of the requirements, what are the form that you need to fill. So most of the organizations that get back to us also raise this concern about the complexity at the national level to easily form an association. And this is where I think also that is important. Your guide also trying to guide people to understand the legal environment and to be prepared also to challenge this legal environment, or to be prepared also to overcome some of this challenge. That's why I think that is important. But also another issue is also the re-registration, because in some countries, not only that you will register for once, but you have also to register again. And sometimes many organizations also that I have to receive some requests were not necessarily informed that they have to register twice. And in some countries, if you don't register, the time that you're supposed to register, you can be prosecuted. You can have criminal charges. And some organizations also were also dissolved because they didn't know, or they ignore either to re-register again after a certain time. And then the whole question also about whenever you submit your file, what is the timeline for authorities to give you an answer if they have any concern against your organization or not? Because most of the cases in many jurisdictions is also the issue of on which topic you as an organization you're supposed to work on. In some countries, as you know, to limit the space and to limit the scope of organization, in some countries, organizations are not supposed to work on some issues. We know that in some some countries that I want to name, on LGBT issue, for example, if you register under that, you will not be allowed in some organizations. Or if you are working on corruption issue, in some jurisdiction, government will say this is a prerogative of government, not the prerogative of an organization. Or you monitor the budget of the police or army, is not about you. So there are this complexity to form association that is quite difficult. Also, in addition to this, the fees of how much you pay, how much of money you have to pay to be able to register through the process, because it's not only one step, it can be several steps also for you. And then the issue of also the body or the body that's supposed to control the work of association or to accept that association is registered. And the question also of dissolution of association, on which ground association can be dissolved in particular country. We know that this is one. Even if we advocate that the dissolution of an organization is a severe measure that should not be taken by the state, or whenever there is imminent threat and the state take decision, the association should normally have the right to be able to have a process of appeal. In some countries, there is no process of appeal. And you have to know that when you create an association, that I'm navigating this legal environment where I need to pay attention on what are the grounds of dissolution of an association. For example, in some countries, filing your tax, you have to do it. If you don't do it to certain limits, you will be dissolved. So this is the challenge that we have seen, and they are emerging. And then in the new challenge that we have also seen coming up, which is also important, and I always emphasize that the creation of association, the operation of association is not just about NGO law. It's about all several other legislation in the country that affect also the work of association. We have the counterterrorism law, which today, because of the framework, international framework on fighting of counterterrorism, many governments use this to enact law, even if some of these countries do not have any issue about terrorism. They enact this law because it's good to limit and to control and also to repress any dissent. And then you have also limitation of access to resources, and I think my colleague just mentioned that. And we know that the new framework of FARAF also enable many countries. If you look at some of the law on money laundering, some of the law that control access to resources for non-profit organization, the justification always comes from the FARAF regulation recommendation 8. How some of the countries implement those regulations, and how countries control the work of organization. What are the the source of the funding and what will be how, and also important part is also that if a particular country you have, for example, a foreign agent law, you need to know under which you will be under which law you will be requested to register if you receive funding from abroad or from foreign sources. So these are the important. And then the recent evolution of that, so we see also in terms of threats on organization is also in relation to also the populism and also the fundamentalism. Why is important also why is it linked to the association? Because some of this rhetoric that we are hearing today, they are linked to the sometimes national interests, or they are linked to the inability of some country to overcome some of the main issues that are affecting country, or some of the main questions that the country needs to answer. Like, for example, refugees issues. In some country where NGO work on refugees, and where, for example, refugees issue become like a national rhetoric or populism rhetoric, there are some laws sometimes that limit those organizations. You need to understand that and to be able to navigate through this law. And we have also seen the emergence of the Congos, for example, which is another type. So what I want to say here is not about only legislation, but also practice. Even if in some countries there are legislation, you need also to understand how it works in the practice, because it's important. It's important also. We saw in many countries that the practice sometimes take maybe 60% compared to the legislation. Legislation is clear, but the practice, 60% of the way that operation is happening is based on the practice, not based on legislation, which sometimes weaken the civil society, because it doesn't allow a vibrant civil society, because you are navigating in very, very insecure legislation, and you don't know what will be used against you. And I think this is why this guide, by providing also legal context, providing also the political context, help also civil society to understand that when I want to create an association, I need to understand that I'm navigating in this particular situation. But I will come back and maybe elaborate more on what I think this guide can specifically help civil society in what will be really from the expert perspective, but also from the perspective of those who are working to promote the right to association, how this guide can be useful. So let me stop there.
Thank you so much, Loman. And I particularly learned something that's, paid attention to something you said, which is simplifying the administrative steps to set up and operate a civil society organization is an obligation arising from human rights conventions that countries sign up to. Therefore, probably we could use the guide in the future to benchmark countries as to how they are complying with this obligation. I don't know, maybe create a traffic light system of yellow, green, red, and by having objective criteria. And by the way, our dream and hope is to integrate artificial intelligence into this knowledge database, so that you can question it more easily, maybe create a robot charity lawyer and interact with it, and then therefore develop objective criterions to benchmark the countries. And also another idea we had was to create buddy systems, so that practical information that you alluded to could be passed on to from NGO to NGO, because we've only researched law here. We haven't researched practice. And when we were researching the law, we didn't only go to the law of associations, we also researched other laws that could pertain to NGO operations. But that is what is said in the book. It's not what's always implemented, but we wanted to cater for implementation gaps and practices in the future, one way or the other. I don't know how at the moment. These are all our wish list and dreams. But yeah, we thank you so much for these reflections. But yeah, Wotwal and Glaman, you said you would talk about the feature and the use of the guide. So let's go to that. in your opinion, how can the guide contribute to creating a conducive legal environment for the civil society? I mean, using the information in the guide, how can we generate advocacy opportunities to strengthen the civil society? I answered a bit my question before this, but I'd like to hear from you as well, ideas and opportunities that maybe not necessarily will be picked up by us, but maybe NGOs who are listening to us on this call could be, points that they might want to tackle using information that is in the database. Maybe they would want to come to us to tell us to collect certain, more information and make use of it. Because at the moment we have an amazing pro bono legal network where we are asking lawyers to do research in 83 countries. We will have the opportunity to put them into more use and ask them more and give them more work. So how could this be used?
So I think first of all, we have to say the guide already as it is has a lot of value and is of use. And the second is that there are, of course, always possibilities to think further. I think for now, what we see three functions, and I think we have only spoken of two. So, of course, it helps organizations when they think of relocating, and it helps organizations who are trying to better understand their own environment. For the own environment, maybe I would add what you also said, Özgür, that legal environment goes beyond the law of association. So we see a lot of other laws that have an impact, and also laws that we sometimes don't automatically think of from the outside. I mean, foreign funding is pretty obvious, but very often we see, and Clément mentioned this as well, counterterrorism legislation that has a side effect. Charity laws, transparency laws. Nobody ever speaks about transparency laws because as a potential challenge, because of course transparency is seen as something needed and positive, but there is a lot of other laws. So helping to understand the own environment, and then I think what it can be already used exactly as it is it can be used for advocacy. So if you are an NGO in your country and you want to make a point of how something could be regulated in a better way, you can bring good practice examples from other countries, and you don't need to do the research yourself. Yeah, so that's as it is. Then beyond that, I think we can make a difference between the guide itself and the data behind the guide. I think the data behind the guide is extremely rich. So I think we should be thinking in these two directions. So the guide itself, you have spoken about a buddy system, or maybe, and I think because it is very complex, and I think looking at the guide only online, it will still be difficult to take a decision on relocation, for example. Or another point that Clément also raised is the difference between law and practice and implementation in practice. So it would be fantastic to have for each country organizations who volunteer not just to feed into the report, but also to be there as a point of call for other organizations who have maybe sometimes very questions that are probably simple to answer for someone who has been in this environment for a while. Yeah, so expanding that more into almost something like a peer support would be great. And then, of course, once organizations have relocated, there are a lot of devils in the detail of registering and starting to work in a new environment. Clément, you referred to a few of those, or several of those. And I think having then someone there in a buddy system who can help you, and that goes definitely beyond the legal registration. We have the whole administrative stuff, the tax, the HR, the payroll, which all of it has a lot of details that are really challenging when you restart your organization, set it up legally again in a new country. So I think for that, some peer support for all of that would be great. And then my second part is the data behind. I think the data behind, there's a lot to say. Maybe something in the middle is I think you mentioned that, or no, in the presentation, Ivana, that beyond the information in that guide, it is already also important to look at the broader enabling environment and the broader civic space situation in a country when you decide to, if you want to relocate in particular, but also when you are researching or whatever. So maybe I wonder how because yours is focused on the legal pillar of the 5 pillars that I said, but there are other systems out there who do look at other parts. And I'm not talking about making them communicate technically. I think that would be super challenging. But at least if you could point in relevant areas to relevant other information sources that do that, that could be really helpful. Yeah. And then the points on the data behind. I think it's very rich data, you know, and I think it could be used, for example, for a compendium of good practices. What works? What works well for civil society? And my observation, just from the EU context, which I know is limited to your guide and also to the audience in today's webinar, but just for the EU, we see there is not one country where you can say the whole legal environment is good or the whole legal environment is bad. You take single laws and you see this one or even this aspect, this article is helpful, other articles are harmful maybe, etc. So I think extracting good practices out of that would be one possibility. That can be used again for advocacy. The other point is for those countries who are willing to learn, it could be extremely valuable to have a peer exchange on the basis of that data and a peer learning of how to do things in a better way. I think I will leave it at that for now. But I think there's a lot more potential, and I think it will also be a lot of work to tackle that, especially if we're talking of a buddy system. I mean, I think that's really challenging. What I can offer from the Fundamental Rights Agency for the EU countries, we have a network of almost 800 civil society organizations from across the EU. We could maybe present the guide to them in a webinar as well, specifically with the invitation to those who can imagine helping with some of what we have discussed. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Music to our ears. Thank you so much. We'll follow up on that. Clément, over to you.
Yes, thank you. And let me also second what Val just said, to agree with her in most of points that you developed. And I think the first thing I'm seeing is that, yes, it's really good that you have this comparative analysis, that you can see the total, one country versus another, and see where the legal regime is more compliant with international norm and everything. And this is an area that I think is important also for the guide, because it's good to have some of these laws, compare them, but also it's also important to make sure that there is also sense of which one is really compatible with the requirement of the international norms or standards. The reason why I'm saying that is also, it can also have it's not just that it will help people to make a decision on which country you are going, which country you want to relocate or not, but it can also bring this sense between the government to understand that, oh, where I am compared to the other country, I need to do more effort. I need to improve on this one, because most of the cases when I go to the country, when I raise kind of issues, always the authority will tell me, can you give us example on where this is working? We copy this from this country, we copy it from this country. But having a data like this, having this one will help quite a lot to just speak and say, listen, see these countries, they have this regime and things are working well, and you are still here. So I think it will also help bring this kind of competition, encouragement from the country to do better if it kind of you put it in a way that it have some compliance elements with the international norms. But also, I think from the expert perspective and from the civil society working advocacy area, it's important to really have these comparative elements and to see also where do we need to make more effort, where do we need also to push more. And I think for me, I always say that the source of the protection of human rights defenders, civil society, is the first thing that I think, from my perspective, as somebody that worked quite a long time at the national level and regional level, is understanding laws and understanding the legal environment in which you are going to operate. Because when you understand this legal environment and you have all elements, you know how to navigate and how to avoid issue that can bring you in trouble with governments. I'm not saying that you have to, you have also to comply with laws that do not comply with international system, because we know that in some of these countries, in particular repressive countries, judicial harassment is based always on some of the piece of the law that are there, or where you probably ignore that, where you think that as an organization, I have the right to do this, but there are pieces of law there that is hiding somewhere where you will just need to infringe that, and then you go to prison. So it means that knowing this, and this guide can also contribute to the protection of civil society and protection of human rights defenders, because then people know which legal environment they are operating. What are the pieces of law that are there that can also pose risk for them? But it helps also donors also to understand also what are some of the regime that govern the access to resources. Is it that in this country, particular country, civil society receiving funding from foreign need prior authorization? If they need prior authorization, then you need also to understand that at this stage, you shouldn't, for example, put this civil society in the same foot in terms of deadline with those other countries where there is no prior authorization. If you have 20 days for people to apply, you need to understand that in Yemen or in Iran or other country, you need to give them more time, because the regime, the system there, do not allow them, or for example, Jordan, do not allow them to receive funding without pre-authorization. So you should apply. So it also helps donors to be more flexible and to be more close to them. But also, I think for me, it is also important also to see this guide also as tools that can inform on evolution, legal evolution in one country. Because I guess that some of the updates, some of the, I mean, you mentioned this when you were doing the, in terms of how new legislation are developed, and which can impact maybe the regime of registration that was there for many years, or can impact it positively or negatively, so that people understand that if I'm in this country and I came in this country operating in particular legal environment, that the new upcoming legislation may change everything for me. So I need also to look at where can I relocate if I'm not able to operate in such environment. So I think also that this guy can help also, and I want also to congratulate you again for putting this, and I think there is a lot of potential to continue to improve it and to feed it in terms of practice. And I mentioned this before, the practice in some countries take very important sometimes, and it takes much more than really what is written there as a law or a piece of law. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Clement. Talking about the potential of the guide, I'd like to turn to Anastasia Miller from PILnet, who is going to talk about the feature of the guide and call to action. Anastasia, over to you.
Thank you, Özgür, and thank you everyone for joining us today. As Özgür mentioned already, we embarked on this journey nearly 4 years ago, just 4 female lawyers, Özgür, Ivana, my colleague from PILnet, Laura, and myself. Despite our limited knowledge of technology, our enthusiasm and innovative ideas moved us forward. But of course, we owe much of our progress to our partners. First of all, I want to mention pro bono lawyers who've been working on the research and help us to fill out our database with very important information. Big thanks to DLA Piper lawyers who cover a significant number of countries, alongside with pro bono lawyers from White & Case, Kinsteller, Trust Law, Hogan-Lovells, Sorainen, Denton's, Altamimi, Van Center, and many others. We're also very grateful for support from tech companies, as Gur mentioned already, a self-guided building tool from Brighter, and also Force for Good program took this tool to completely different level. And of course, support from our donors and philanthropic foundations has been crucial for us to continue our work on this project. What's next? So we stored a significant amount of data. Özgür mentioned that we already have 50 countries, 50, available for users. We have around 20 countries that are under review with our volunteers. And I saw a question in Q&A about our strategy for expansion. Maybe I can elaborate a little bit more how we're actually choosing countries. While we're gratefully accepting all offers from pro bono lawyers, we are also utilizing a brokerage platform at PILnet for nonprofits. And Ivana mentioned that on our website for the Global Nonprofit Guide, we also have a list of clearinghouses that actually providing tailored legal advice. So I would encourage all civil society organizations check this opportunity and access pro bono support. So while at PILnet we're running this platform globally, we can see different types of requests for different type of legal support coming from NGOs on program needs, kind of research for advocacy, but also operational support, different types of compliance, taxation, as well as registration. So this project originated from a surge in requests from nonprofits seeking assistance with registration. By analyzing this data, we actually can put some priorities for outreach for lawyers in specific countries. For example, the full-scale military invasion of Ukraine by Russia, or increasing limitation on the freedom of association in Latin America, particularly in countries like Nicaragua, Bolivia, El Salvador, Venezuela, have made it increasingly challenging for civil society organizations to operate in those regions. Consequently, we observe a pattern of organizations migrating to other countries in the region. With this data in hand, we have been able to respond accordingly and add more countries to meet the current demand. So as you can see, we're adding countries where we have volunteers, but also we're putting some priorities on those countries where we have a high demand for this information. With that said, I want to issue a call for support. While we are launching GNG 2.0 today, we are always thinking about the next level for our tool. What comes next? First, we invite lawyers from around the world to join and contribute to the growth of the project. We are looking for two types of volunteers, pro bono volunteers. First, contributors, lawyers who can conduct research on nonprofit law in countries where they practice or have expertise. My colleague just gonna put now in the chat link to the list of countries. If you don't see your country there, it means we are looking for support and we're encouraging you to reach out to us. Second type of support that we're seeking from pro bono lawyers, we call it auditors, professionals who can review existing research to ensure accuracy and relevance. Secondaries from law firms are also welcome. If you are interested in either role, please reach out to us via the shared inbox that my colleague Laura has provided in the chat. Second, we welcome feedback from civil society organizations, and Ivana already mentioned about how you can help us to improve and enhance and expand the tool. If you cannot find information on a country you are interested in, please report to us via email or using this functionality in the tool. And last but not least, we are calling for support from donors, foundations, and tech companies to invest in this project. Technology is constantly evolving, and with your support, we can enhance our tools' capability. There are numerous ways you can support our project, whether through dedicating your time, skills, knowledge, or financial resources. Please feel free to reach out to us via email at info@globalnonprofitguide.org. We are open to different types and forms of collaboration. Thanks, and we are looking forward to working together to make the law work for civil society. Özgür, over to you.
Thank you so much, Anastasia. And Clemenval, thank you so much. I was rushing a little bit, omitted to thank you for your participation, great remarks, ideas, and enthusiasm. We're very grateful. My next two guests are, we're not finished, I have two more guests. Maria and Yuri, if you don't mind, could you please put your cameras on. Maria Bogoslav is the Director of Association of Innovative and Digital Education and Coordinator of Ukrainian Educational Hubs Network. And Yuri Chavusov is a legal advisor of the Belarusian civil society organizations and provides legal assistance and conducts advocacy on behalf of the Belarusian civil society actors. Yuri and Maria are two users of the guide who are going to kindly agree to share with us their experience and tell us what they think and how, give us some guidance about how they want to see the guide growing. So Yuri, I mean, sorry, Maria, ladies first, but can we make an exception and start with Yuri because he is one of the first users of the original guide, the PDF guide, actually, maybe even the originator of this idea. Yuri, can you tell us like how you came up with the idea and how you made use of the guides afterwards? And what else do you want to see in it? Thank you.
Thank you, Özgür. And first of all, congratulations to all Ivana, Özgür, and all the team involved in the preparation of this new edition of the guide. Exactly, Belarus is one of the countries when we use such tools. Maybe first of all, I think we have 2 decades of experience when Belarusian CSO try to be registered in foreign jurisdictions because of worst environment for civil society organizations in Belarus. And I remember maybe 12 years ago, we discussed with colleagues from ECNL, well, so diversity in the world, so different jurisdictions, so different opportunities for different CSO. For example, we discussed the establishment of endowment, which we cannot establish in Belarus, but in other countries you can prepare this. And this time, 12 years ago, we have a few guidelines about how to be registered in Lithuania, in Poland, neighbor countries around Belarus, but we talk about this, okay, how to prepare organizations to make informed choice, what country is better to be placed to establish legal entity abroad in foreign jurisdictions. So it's this tool is one of the brilliant example of the tool which coming from the real life, from the practical needs of civil society organizations. So, and 10 years ago, I think for Belarus and CSO, these tools has been useful for 2 main functions. One of them is avoid legal restrictions, because avoid strategic legal restrictions, because in Belarus we have a ban on activity of unregistered organizations, and if organizations registered abroad, okay, it's possible to operate and put the name of this organization in your business card or in the organizing event or seminars. And very important also, it's important for media, because in Belarus, media cannot distribute information from the name on behalf of unregistered organizations. And if organization registered abroad, it's possible to put the name in the article in newspaper. And the second function, it's avoid practical, technical restrictions. For example, some functions can be removed abroad to receive money from foreign donors. to organize some educational events abroad. For example, in neighbor countries, we have organizations prepared to educational activity. For example, in Lithuania, we have Belarusian House of Human Rights. It's a place when a lot of human rights educational activity can be organized. But it's past. Now the situation in Belarus completely changed. It's impossible to be registered abroad and active inside the country. It's impossible to operate inside the country of the name of foreign based CSO, because the environment, the legal restrictions are so strict. So in foreign countries, it's not safe place to operate inside your countries. And I think now we can say about our experience of 2 decades of activity from the name of foreign based legal entities. It's possible maybe divide three modes why civil society organization make registration abroad in foreign jurisdictions. One of them, it's ordinary technical issues. Okay, if business looking for better jurisdictions, sometime even CSO from country with good environment for civil society can be registered abroad in another jurisdiction just for technical reasons. Maybe for better taxations, maybe for better conditions for collect donations or donations by electronic means, or even sometime for lobbying, because you know a lot of organizations registered in Geneva or in Brussels in Belgium just for direct access to the place when decision making located. But sometimes registration in foreign jurisdictions is a tool to avoid restrictions, something like safe harbor for civil society activity. And our Belarusian experience, it's a good experience of such way of activity. But sometimes in Belarus now there's so strict restrictions. Sometimes we talk about relocation of CSO. Relocation from the country where the environment so impossible for activity. So decision-making centers of CSO go abroad. So it's a three different mode of using this method, registration in foreign jurisdictions. Of course, this tool is useful for all 3 modes and important for all 3 modes. But from our experience, our lessons from such activity, it's important to take into account not only legal issues, but also political issues. Because political environment, even government policy for foreign CSO relocated in your country, also sometimes important. We talk about this now from Belarusian experience because our country involved in war, Russian-Ukrainian war, and some restrictions coming from this policy of our country in country of relocations. In Georgia, in Ukraine, restrictions coming to Belarusian CSO because it's CSO from the country involved in the war. And also additional risks coming from this registration abroad. So in conclusions, this tool and this method, registration abroad, of course, it's important tool. It's important for different CSO in different countries, but it's not miracle key. It's not solving all the problem. It's one of the possible tool to mitigate risk. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Yuri. Over to you, Maria. Sorry, we're a little bit behind the time, so please share us.
Okay, I also would like to share, thank you for this possibility. I also would like to share my case of using this tool. We have another one situation. Also, it's quite unexpected for a lot of leaders who should move to other countries all over the world during this last wild-scaled war from Ukraine. people from Ukraine should move to other countries. That's why a lot of Ukrainian organizations who actively operated in Ukraine couldn't work anymore in other countries, because a lot of donor organizations need to work with local entities, and that's why Ukrainian organization couldn't be operated anymore. And a lot of Ukrainians and me personally faced this situation that completely another country where you don't know anything about legislation. Sometimes you don't even speak good language. You cannot. You don't have a lot of money to contact quite expensive lawyers. A lot of people should organize own entities to continue their civil society projects, especially now. It's also very important, especially the project which support refugees from Ukraine and other countries, or other building projects and so on, humanitarian projects. And all these people faced this situation. They are absolutely zero knowledge in other legislation, and we faced this situation several months ago, and we already know DLA Piper organization, and actually only because of this we asked it to help us to organize organization in several countries, because for example, I'm leading Ukrainian educational hub network, so we not operating not only one country, but we are creating organization in different countries, and this tool is very very effective for such organization as our organization, which want to work on different countries and different levels, and that's why we contacted DLA Piper, and this guide was advised us. In such a way, we analyzed information in Great Britain, for example. We are now opening the one of entity there, and other countries were also move through with our activities. I think it's a very, very important tool, especially for NGOs who created by different residents of different countries, because it's these people have usually lack opportunity to organize some analytics in other countries, and even usual NGO leaders in local countries can have some problems, because it's very risky, and the previous speakers also talked about this, because if you do something wrong, you can face some extra taxation, or you can be even imprisoned if you do something behind the law. And it's to organize some new entity, it's very, very nervous, and this tool is also very good to minimize this nervous stage, because you see and very, very clear and very short form, you see the difference and all the riskable things, and at least you can already manage some concrete questions. You can already further ask lawyers or other tax advisors and other people. So I think it's very important, and it's good that you a little bit upgrade this guide, because I use it already previous one, and now it looks like a separate project, and it's very good that people can already see that as a separate project with a lot of new function, with possibility to compare the countries, to compare entities, with possibility to reach different analytics, additional analytics. And I think it's very important, and I will be glad to share this tool among our network of Ukrainian Education Hub, among our network of my personal friends who are active and face the same problems. And I wish you every success and development of this tool further.
Thank you so much, Yuri and Maria. I'd like to invite Ivana, Anastasia, Candice, Yoneke, and Laura from PILnet and ECNL to please come on camera, because I'd like to really thank you. You are the heroes of this project. It's not me. I just volunteered to chair, nominated myself to chair, but you know, you worked harder than me, to be honest, behind the scenes. So thank you so much. It's been an amazing journey. I look forward to what is to come. And thanks to our speakers, Clemenval, Maria, Yuri, again, for being with us today and reflecting with us. We took really good notes. We will to try to build on what you've said. And thanks to our participants for listening to us. It's been long, but I hope it was helpful. Ivana, Anastasia, any last words, Laura, anything you would like to share before we wrap up? Okay.
I would just like
Go ahead,
to
Ivana.
extend my thank you to everyone as well. Like, it has been a lot of work. It wouldn't have been possible without all of you, without the lawyers, without our pro bono helpers. So thank you so much to everyone, and thank you very much for the participants. It was amazing, and we definitely stay in touch regarding the next steps. Thank you so much.
I will be very brief. I hope this event and this launch is just the beginning of new collaboration with all of you. We're really open to any form of collaboration, and we are looking forward to hear your feedback, how we can grow and improve and work together. Thank you so much, everyone.